Welcome to the Dub Dive. Today, we're venturing into that really unsettling space when nightmares seem to, well, bleed into reality. We're looking at those moments, when the line just blurs completely. We've gathered some accounts, firsthand experiences, really, that explore this. Our aim isn't just to share spooky stories, though they are spooky. It's more about exploring how our minds can play these tricks, or perhaps how reality sometimes echoes our worst fears. So get ready, these might make you question things a bit. Let's start with something maybe familiar, the idea of sounds from the outside getting into our dreams. But this first one takes it to a pretty chilling level. It comes from someone named Earl Fineart. He mentioned having a really long, stressful day, finally crashing into sleep. But the dream wasn't restful at all. He's in these dark woods, sky is kind of faintly blue, and there's this huge, imposing castle ahead. And from inside this castle, this horrifying sound. He described it as demonic, like a hellish voice echoing, calling to him. It felt miles away, but he somehow knew it was inside the castle. And he couldn't stop himself, just moving towards it. Weirdly, the castle had no doors. The inside and outside were sort of the same. Really disorienting. So as this demonic voice gets louder, he's moving through these corridors, they get narrower, he's banging into walls, the screaming gets really intense, sounds like it's behind a specific door. He goes in, the room is just pitch black, absolute darkness. But he feels himself being pulled closer to the sound. Then he bumps into something and bam, he wakes up. Okay, but here's the kicker. He wakes up and he's hunched over his 4-year-old son's bed. His son is crying, just terrified. And the kid tells him, "Daddy, you walked in, you stopped, and you bent down closer and closer." Turns out his son had been screaming from his own nightmare. That horrifying demonic sound in Earl's dream, it was his son's actual screams.
Right. And that's a classic, though extreme, example of what psychologists call stimulus incorporation. Your sleeping brain isn't totally cut off. Sounds, touches, they can absolutely get woven into the dream narrative.
So the brain hears the screaming.
Exactly. It hears the screaming, a real external sound, and instead of waking him up immediately, it tries to make sense of it within the dream. And in this case, it built this whole terrifying castle scenario around his child's real distress. It transforms the external into something internal and frightening.
Wow. It just twists reality into this personalized horror show. It really shows how, I guess, vulnerable our dream state is to the outside world. Okay, sticking with that theme of the outside world intruding, let's look at a story where it feels less like incorporation and more like reality was knocking, quite literally. This one's from an Ask Reddit post back in summer 2015. The person got home late from a party, admits they were high, and fell asleep pretty fast. They mentioned the theory that, smoking pot might make dreams more vivid or weird, and after this, they weren't arguing. So the dream starts, they're in the woods at night. But it's not just, like, trees and quiet. It's got that creepy dream vibe. Ghostly wind, wolf howls, and footsteps. Always footsteps behind them. That really specific dream feeling, where it's just magically horrifying. More than just being lost. They're running from these footsteps always the same distance away until they find this building. They duck inside, they somehow find pranks and board up the door. Classic dream logic. And the dream just seems to go on forever. Footsteps circling the house now. The house itself is weird, almost empty, black and white. They're sitting on a couch, then a shadow falls across the window. And shortly after that, knocking starts. Just relentless, terrifying knocking in the dream. It goes on and on until they wake up. But the knocking doesn't stop when they wake up.
Ah, okay. Yeah. They jump out of bed, look, and there's actually someone at their window looking in, knocking. They scream for their dad, and whoever it was at the window just bolts. That's fascinating. It really blends stimulus incorporation with potentially what we call a hypnopompic hallucination.
Hypnopompic.
Yeah, it happens in that state right between sleeping and waking. Dream elements can kind of spill over into your waking perception for a moment. Being high might have certainly blurred that transition state even more.
So the real knocking started while they were asleep.
It seems likely. Yeah. The brain, still half dreaming, hears the real knocking, incorporates it into the nightmare, the figure outside, the chase, and then maybe even projects the image of the figure onto the window as they wake up. The sound, the actual knocking, became the terrifying core of the dream's end, rather than just waking them up immediately.
So the sound was real, the fear was real, maybe the figure was partly dream, partly real perception. That's incredibly unsettling. Their dad checked, found nothing, told them it was just a dream. But they still wonder. Okay, so the brain integrates sounds. But what about when a dream lines up with reality in a way that feels different? Less about senses, more like knowing something. Almost predictive. This next one comes from a forum user, Joey Manuso. And they make a point of saying they're an atheist, don't believe in miracles, but just can't explain this. The nightmare itself is really disturbing. It's Halloween night in the dream. They're trick-or-treating with friends. First house is normal. Second house, they ring the bell. The door just swings open on its own. Dark, bluish living room inside. Joey steps in, and poof. Friends are gone. The door behind him vanishes. The room starts changing rapidly. You know how dreams do that. After wandering a bit, he finds himself upstairs. Doesn't remember climbing stairs, though. And on the wall, this absolutely enormous framed picture. He described it as like 10 meters long, 20 meters wide. And it's a picture of his cousin. She was about 30, someone he hadn't seen in years. And her eyes in the portrait are unnervingly large, and they're following him. Really creepy. Suddenly, the giant portrait cracks. There's awful sound, like rusty nails scraping, ear-splittingly loud. He's frozen, just watching as this massive picture starts to tilt, starts falling right towards him, about to crush him. And right before it hits, he wakes up, heart absolutely pounding. Okay, so he wakes up from that. Minutes later, maybe 5 a.m., his phone rings. It's his uncle, calling to tell him that his cousin, the one in the giant falling portrait, had just died from a heroin overdose.
Wow. That is quite a story. From a scientific perspective, this touches on ideas like, well, synchronicity, or at least very powerful perceived synchronicity. We don't have evidence for premonition in dreams, but the brain is an incredible pattern matcher.
So maybe subconscious worry.
Possibly. Perhaps on some level there was an awareness or anxiety about his cousin, maybe struggles she was facing, even if not consciously processed. That anxiety could manifest symbolically in the dream, the unsettling portrait, the feeling of impending doom. The sheer emotional power of the dream, followed so closely by the actual tragic news, creates an extremely strong psychological connection for the dreamer. It feels meaningful. Our minds are wired to find those connections, even if, objectively, it might be a very striking coincidence.
Yeah, the timing is just incredible. It makes the coincidence feel almost impossible to dismiss, especially for the person experiencing it. But let's push that boundary a bit further. What about when the detail isn't just emotional, but like really specific, like a number? This next account starts with a dream about reading a newspaper at home. Then, suddenly, the lights go out. The dream becomes about finding why the power's out. It leads them to a fuse box in the basement. But here's the detail. In real life, their fuse box isn't in the basement. So dream basement, they've got a flashlight, they open the fuse box, and inside there's a sticky note. It says, "Go back upstairs to the red room." While they're still down there, this moaning sound starts up from the boiler or laundry room area. They said it felt like the dream was deliberately playing on their childhood fears. The boiler room door cracks open, something peeks out. But remembering the note, they turn and leave the basement. Back upstairs, second floor now, a door appears at the end of the hall that isn't there in reality, and it's glowing red. There's a disturbing, echoing sound coming from behind it. As they get closer, the sound gets clearer. It's a voice chanting, 314, 314. Over and over, they open this glowing red door. Inside, just a single chair facing the wall. The whole room is bathed in that red glow, and the voice chanting 314 is suddenly crystal clear, almost like it's right in their ear, and then they wake up. Abruptly, heart racing. Instinctively, they reach over, grab their iPhone off the desk to check the time. It was exactly 3:14 a.m.
Right.
They specifically noted no other digital clocks nearby, just the phone, right where they left it.
That one. That's harder to explain away as simple coincidence, isn't it? The specificity of the number is striking. How does the subconscious, deep in a dream, latch on to such a precise marker like the time?
Exactly.
Well, one possibility involves our internal biological clock, our circadian rhythm. Even asleep, the brain maintains some awareness of time progression. It's conceivable, though speculative, that the brain, nearing the 3.14 mark, somehow incorporated that awareness into the dream narrative. Perhaps it anticipated the time, or a subtle internal cue registered. The dream then constructed this whole narrative around the number 314, culminating just as the clock actually hit 3.14. It speaks to the complexity of our internal timing, which we really don't fully understand.
So the brain might know the time on some level and build a horror story around it. That's bizarrely clever in a way.
The dreaming mind is certainly creative, often in unsettling ways.
Okay, for our final story. This one really pushes the idea of stimulus incorporation to its limit. It's described as possibly the most disturbing nightmare the person ever had. It starts with them in their house, or, a dream version of it. They're in bed and they hear a sound from downstairs. So in the dream, they go downstairs in the dark, following this noise. It leads them towards the laundry room, but the sound still feels distant. Then the dream seems to suggest, maybe the kitchen. But looking out the kitchen windows, it's just pure blackness. Not night, just nothing. Void. Only the house exists. The banging sound then seems to be coming from upstairs, so they follow it up, eventually ending up at the attic door. Gotta be in there. They open the attic door. Inside, there's an old woman standing near some boxes, and she's slamming her hand down on one of the boxes, slowly but loudly. An unnatural, horrible banging sound. The dreamer tries to back away quietly, but the old woman turns. Her mouth opens impossibly wide. She reaches out, starts screaming, and just loops right at them. And that's the moment they wake up. Terrified, obviously. They think, okay, awful dream, just a dream. But then they hear a bang from downstairs.
Huh? A bang that sounds chillingly like the one the old woman was making in the dream. Their heart just drops. They start heading downstairs. Another bang. It's coming from the front door this time. They grab a butcher knife from the kitchen, crouch down behind the door, just listening, waiting.
And this is where it gets particularly interesting from a stimulus perspective. The banging didn't wake them initially.
Right. That's what they found so horrifying later.
Instead of pulling them out of sleep, the external sound, the real banging, became the absolute climax of the nightmare. The brain didn't just register it. It integrated it seamlessly into the dream's terrifying narrative, building up to it with the old woman figure. It's like the dream used the real sound as its final jump scare. So, after waiting a minute in silence behind the door, knife in hand, they finally risk a peek through the window. And there was someone there, standing in their driveway, clearly the person who'd been pounding on the door at 4 a.m. The person saw them, maybe, and walked away. But the dreamer's stress, this wasn't like someone knocking politely. This was pounding, like trying to break the door down. And the most terrifying part for them wasn't just the potential intruder, but the fact that that sound didn't wake them up. It just became part of the horror inside their head.
It's a profound example of how the dreaming mind works to maintain its own reality, even incorporating potentially threatening external stimuli into its narrative rather than letting them shatter the dream state immediately. Deeply unsettling.
Absolutely. So looking back at all these stories, you really have to say it's more than just weird dreams, isn't it?
It certainly paints a picture of a very dynamic interplay between our internal world and external reality during sleep.
We've seen sounds getting woven in, maybe even subconscious awareness of time, or distant events manifesting symbolically, and real-world threats becoming dream climaxes. It shows how incredibly porous that boundary can feel. So it leaves you wondering, right, next time you wake up from a really vivid nightmare, maybe one with a specific sound or image, how much attention should you pay to your surroundings? Could there be an echo of it in the waking world, like these storytellers found? It definitely makes you think about what our minds are capable of while we're supposedly just resting. Well, thank you for joining us on this pretty unsettling deep dive. If these accounts sent a shiver down your spine or maybe sparked a memory of your own strange experience, we'd love to hear about it. And if you found this exploration into the darker corners of sleep and reality interesting, please do like this video, share it with someone else who appreciates this stuff, and definitely subscribe to the Horror Docs channel. We'll have more deep dives into the terrifying and the unexplained. Until next time.